The internet really thought it had this story figured out. For months, the roles were clear, almost too clean. One person was painted as the villain, another as the victim, and everything in between felt like noise. People picked sides quickly, ran with headlines, and didn't question much. But then something happened that flipped everything upside down. One interview, it didn't start loud. There was no shouting, no chaos, no dramatic reveal. Just a calm sit down, a composed face, and a few carefully chosen words. But somehow, that quiet moment hit harder than any viral argument, because instead of confirming what people already believed, it did the opposite. It made everything feel uncertain. When Claressa Shields sat down and started talking, people expected emotion. They expected frustration, maybe even a bit of vulnerability. After all, she had been framed as someone caught in a messy situation, someone who didn't ask for the spotlight but got pulled into it anyway. But that's not what they saw. She looked calm. Too calm. She spoke clearly, almost like someone who had already rehearsed every possible question in her head. Her tone didn't sound like someone defending herself. It sounded like someone explaining a decision she fully stood by. And that's where the first crack in the narrative appeared, because victims don't usually sound that controlled. As the interview continued, she described everything as a private romance. Simple words, nothing complicated. But the way people received those words was completely different. Online, viewers didn't hear private. They heard hidden. They didn't hear romance. They heard something that wasn't meant to be seen. And just like that, the conversation shifted. It didn't help that she avoided saying Remy Ma's name directly. That detail might seem small, but on the internet, nothing is small. People notice everything. The pauses, the wording, even the names you choose not to say. And when she kept circling around without directly addressing Remy, it made people lean in even harder. Why avoid it? That question alone started a wave of speculation. Then came another layer. There were mentions, nothing fully confirmed, but enough to raise eyebrows, that Papoose wasn't just involved personally, but possibly professionally too. Business ties, management roles, blurred lines between work and relationships. And when those two worlds start mixing, things get complicated fast. Now, suddenly, what people thought was just a relationship started to look like something else entirely. Something more strategic. As the interview clips spread, the internet did what it always does. It started digging. Old videos, past interviews, timelines, small interactions that didn't seem important before. Everything was pulled back into the spotlight and re-examined with a new perspective. And the more people looked, the more questions they had. Because the story she told in that interview didn't fully match what people thought they were seeing in the bigger picture. There were gaps, moments that didn't line up perfectly. And in situations like this, those gaps become the main focus. But the real turning point came when she said something that should have sounded romantic, but didn't. Love at first sight. On its own, that phrase is harmless. People say it all the time, but in this situation, it hit differently because the context didn't support it, not for the audience at least. People started asking, how? How does someone with a long history, a public relationship, a life already built, suddenly fall into something new that fast? It didn't feel natural to a lot of viewers. It felt rushed, or worse, planned. And then there was that one small detail she mentioned, her assistant saying, "Papoose is here." To some, it sounded like a normal moment, but to others, it didn't feel random at all. It felt arranged, like something that had already been set in motion before it even happened. And that's when the narrative really flipped, because now, instead of seeing someone being pursued, people started wondering if she was the one making moves behind the scenes, creating opportunities, positioning herself in the right place at the right time. And whether that's true or not, almost doesn't matter anymore, because once the audience starts seeing a pattern, that pattern becomes reality in their minds. By the time the interview ended, the damage, or depending on how you look at it, the shift was already done. What was supposed to clear things up ended up making everything more complicated. And the worst part? that was just the beginning. After that interview dropped, everything changed fast. The conversation didn't slow down. It actually got louder. Every clip, every sentence, even the smallest details started getting picked apart. And once people start analyzing things like that, it's almost impossible to control where the story goes. The biggest focus quickly became that one line, love at first sight. On its own, it sounds normal. But in this situation, it didn't sit right with a lot of people. The timing, the history, the connections, it just didn't feel natural. And when something doesn't feel real, people start looking for another explanation. That's when the narrative flipped again. Instead of seeing this as something emotional, many started seeing it as something planned. The moment where her assistant said, "Papoose is here," became a key detail. People replayed it over and over, questioning whether it was really spontaneous or something that had already been set up. From there, everything started connecting in a different way. Then the conversation moved beyond just the relationship and into something deeper, loyalty. Because if there was any kind of bond or friendship before all this, then this situation doesn't just look messy. It looks like betrayal. And that's what made reactions stronger. At the same time, there was a clear contrast forming. Claressa Shields was speaking, explaining, trying to shape the narrative. Meanwhile, Remy Ma stayed mostly silent. And that silence carried weight because while one side was talking, the other side didn't need to. And that difference made people look at the situation even more closely. Some saw Claressa's responses as confidence. Others saw it as over-explaining. Then old clips started resurfacing, moments that didn't matter before suddenly looked suspicious. Whether those connections are true or not didn't really matter anymore because once people believe they see a pattern, it sticks. And that's when the pressure really started building because now every word, every clip, every reaction was adding fuel to the situation. And the more she tried to explain, the more questions people had. At that point, it stopped being about one interview. It became about perception. And once perception shifts this strongly, it's very hard to bring it back. Now, everything sits in a strange place. Nothing feels fully confirmed, but nothing feels simple anymore either. The story has moved beyond just a relationship and turned into something much bigger, a conversation about image, trust, and the choices people make when they think no one is paying attention. Because at the center of all this isn't just what happened, it's how it looks. And right now, it doesn't look clean. Every time a new clip surfaces, it adds another layer. Sometimes it's a small detail, something that wouldn't matter in a different situation. But here, everything matters. Tone, timing, even facial expressions. People are breaking it all down, trying to find meaning in every second. And the more they look, the more complicated it becomes. There's also this growing sense that more is still hidden, that what the public has seen so far is only part of the story, rumors about messages, voice notes, behind the scenes conversations, whether they're real or not, they keep the tension alive. Because if even a fraction of that turns out to be true, it could completely change everything again. At the same time, the pressure isn't just on Claressa anymore. It's spreading. Papoos's name keeps coming up, not just in the context of the relationship, but in connection to business decisions, partnerships, and potential fallout. And when personal and professional worlds collide like that, the impact can go far beyond just public opinion. Then there's Remy, still mostly silent. And that silence continues to shape the narrative in its own way. Because the longer it lasts, the more people start wondering if there's a reason behind it, if there's something being held back, something that could come out at the right time. And that possibility changes everything. Because now, it's not just about what's already happened. It's about what could happen next. That's what keeps people watching. That's what keeps the conversation alive because no one knows how this ends. Will more interview footage come out and clarify things? Or will it make the situation even messier? Will Remy eventually speak and share her side? Or will she let silence continue doing the work for her? And what about Claressa? Right now, she's in a position where every move matters. Every statement, every appearance, every response. It all adds to the story people are building in their minds. And the truth is, this kind of pressure doesn't come from one mistake. It comes from a series of moments that slowly build up until everything feels connected. That's where things stand now. Not finished, not resolved, just waiting for the next piece of information, the next clip, the next response that could shift everything again. Because if there's one thing this situation has shown, it's that narratives can change fast, faster than anyone expects. And once they do, there's no easy way to go back. So now the question isn't just about what happened, it's about what people believe happened. And sometimes that belief becomes stronger than the truth itself. So what do you think? Was this really just a relationship that got misunderstood? Or was there something more calculated happening behind the scenes from the start? And do you think Remy will stay silent? Or is there still something waiting to come out? Because one thing is clear, this story isn't over, not even close.